People tend to think you need big lights to pull off cinematic images like this, when in fact, pretty much all of my videos were made with a small light. I used a SmallRig RC60B. I added another RC60B as my actual key light. It might surprise you, but these shots were all done with a more capable and even smaller light. The Molus X100 RGB Mackey edition that was given to me by... I'm gonna show you 4 scenarios where I only use this light and tell you all about the features. Now, even though this light is sponsored by Zhiyun and Mackey is a beast of a filmmaker, everything I say here is my own opinion. Neither of them had any influence whatsoever on what I'm about to tell you. Now, let's dive right into our first scene. So, for the first one light setup, I chose a cozy environment to kind of replicate that typical 90s rom-com type of film look, with my main subject sitting on a couch and browsing through her record collection. And because there was so much daylight coming in from the outside, I took over some control by setting up some blocking materials on both sides of her to really start from scratch with lighting. As you can see here, this is the scene naturally lit and very well exposed. And now, after I set up the negative fills, it gets a whole lot darker. Not in the background, just in the foreground, which is exactly where I wanted more control. Now, of course, we need to artificially light the scene as it's way too dark and unnatural. And this is where the Molus X100 RGB comes in. I mounted the parabolic softbox that comes with it onto it to diffuse the light and make it really soft. I set the light to a rather warm color temperature of 3900 Kelvin to give the image some color contrast, with it being slightly warmer on her body and the background slightly cooler with the daylight still hitting this area. This effect is even more visible with the 4500 Kelvin that I set my camera's white balance to. And at just 42% intensity with a rather compact softbox, it's pretty remarkable how well lit our subject gets in a sunlit room. Speaking of a sunlit room, how does the light actually perform against the daylight with no block whatsoever? Well, here's the result, and keep in mind that the light is still at just 42% intensity. It's a pretty impressive performance, I would say. I mean, look at the exposure with false color applied. Against the sunlight, and at just 42% intensity, there's definitely an increase in exposure, which you can see all over the image. Now you might say, the difference is so little, why would I buy a light for that? Well, as I said earlier, it's also about color temperatures. If you use the daylight as your only light source, it has the same temperature all over the room, and it gets a little harder to separate different parts of the image when it comes to color grading. Although you could definitely argue natural lighting looks also more than decent. Just depends on the mood you're trying to achieve, I guess. There's another cool thing Zhiyun ships with the X100, and I'm sure many of you will like it. At least I do. For this, let's have a look at this next scene. A super cozy and moody living room with an old lady reading her newspapers. It looks super naturally lit, and with that, look how soft the light is on her skin and how nice contrast looks in this image. And soft light is mostly achieved through 2 ways: a big light source and heavy diffusion. And you guessed it, I had both on the set while using the tiny Zhiyun light as the only light source. So I grabbed the Bones mount adapter that comes with the light that lets me mount basically any bigger softbox on it and therefore increases the overall size of the light. Also, for this scene I hung another layer of diffusion in front of it that made another huge difference in terms of softness. And also, again, in terms of competing against the daylight that was coming in from the outside. I set the light to 80% intensity and a rather cool temperature of 4200 Kelvin to highlight her skin tones against the cold daylight. Now, look what it does. You can clearly see how her face gets this subtle and soft increase in warm exposure, which looks really pleasing to the eye. And since I set up a negative fill on the other side of her, the contrast really shapes her face in a 3-dimensional way, which makes the image even more interesting. So we've got our daylight motivated by our X100 RGB and the negative fill for contrast. Look at the before and after. Not only do we have an increase in controlled exposure, but it also creates a different mood as we set the light to a warmer temperature. Adding some haze in the background for both softness as well as cooler temperature for contrast Helps to make the image very interesting, of course, but the real game changer for me is the ability to mount any big softbox with Bowens mount to this tiny light. Actually, right now, the light above me is also the X100 RGB with the Bowens mount and a big 80 centimeter softbox. In my opinion, it makes it very versatile and makes it possible to create images like this. For the minimalistic folks among you, you can of course double down on the one light only scenario and using no negative fill, no big diffusion or other stuff. Just you and your little Molus X100 RGB. Here are two scenes showcasing that. Take this first top light situation for example. We have our subject organizing some stuff in the basement while being lit by just a cool halogen type of ceiling light. For that, all I did was mounting the X100 high above me. And honestly, with this flat form factor, I could have gone even higher than that. I added the little softbox that comes with it and made the whole fixture point downwards on the back of my head, creating this nice backlighting kind of look. And as minimalistic as I love it to be, I also love softness. So I found a garbage bag that basically everybody has at home. Well, I mean, hopefully. I ripped off a small piece and clammed it onto the softbox. And I will tell you in a second why I left out a part. With this added piece of diffusion, you can see that here, the light creates this nice soft edge. And you might wonder now where this slash of cold light is coming from. I mean, he said he's only going to use one light, right? You're damn right. This light is just a reflection of not the boxes, which you might have guessed could be the other option, but from this metal shelf that creates this bluish kind of illumination on my face, making it a really interesting color contrast from cold to warm to cold in this image. Remember that I left out a part when clamping the garbage bag onto the light? That's what it was for, and it resulted in this moody basement scene, which I think looks really cool. And by the way, all the scenes that I show in this video are well lit. The grain that may look like noise, also in brighter scenes like this, was added in post. Now, the X100 has two other great features. First, it has a wide range of color temperatures, ranging from a staggering 2500 to 10,000. And it comes with a Fresnel lens and barn doors that you can magnetically attach to shape your light and make it even pointier. Let me show you what I mean in this last scene. The subject standing in a dark room at golden hour is being lit by the sun that shines through a little gap of possibly either a door or a window. To create an orange and teal color contrast while keeping the room dark, I actually closed the curtains to about 90%, just enough to let some daylight coming in. This results in a cold blue edge on my face, as well as a rather bluish background. Now, I've said it before, but Zhiyun ships the X100 RGB with a Fresnel that increases the light intensity even more and also lets you shape the light with the magnetic barn doors. Exactly what we need for imitating the sun shining through a small gap. Look what it does. I mean, it's so freaking cool that the color temperature range lets you dial in values from 2500 up to 10,000 Kelvin, which allows you to create basically any day or night mood you want. And when setting your white balance in cam slightly higher, the effect is even more visible here. Even though I ran it on just 25%, the light was really bright, and what I noticed was, even with higher values, the fan was so freaking quiet, so definitely something that is important if you record sound on set, like interviews and stuff. Now, to really double down on this one light sunset golden hour setup, I placed a negative fill on the shadow side, which really crushes the blacks into oblivion, making the light look even harder and more realistic in terms of sunlight. It's very subtle on the shadow side, but see how the details are now gone? I love hard shadows like that. And now, my conclusion. What really makes this light stand out to me, especially against the RC60B, are these three things: RGB and CCT range. The X100 RGB gives you full RGB color control and a super wide CCT range from 2500 to 10,000 Kelvin. That means, in my opinion, way more creative flexibility, while the SmallRig RC60B is limited to a bicolor range of 2700 to 6500 Kelvin. Accessories. With the X100 Pro Kit, you get a compact but not too small softbox, a Fresnel lens, magnetic barn doors, a Bowens mount adapter, a power supply, and a swappable battery. The SmallRig RC60B comes with a smaller softbox, a reflector dish, 2 handles, a USB-C cable, and that's pretty much it. Bluetooth control. The X100 can be fully controlled via the Zhiyun Vega app. The RC60B neither has Bluetooth nor app control, so you basically have to dial in everything on the unit, which can be pretty limiting depending on the setup. And a little bonus feature that the X100 has is Music Sync, which enables the light to actually react to music and sounds around you. The only thing I'd really wish for is that the X100 combo had a small tilt adapter that fits into the 1/4-inch thread. Otherwise, you always have to tilt your stance, which can be a little complicated sometimes. The RC60B has these nice handles, so having something similar in the Molus set as well would definitely make it the perfect kit. And the Smorik RC60B is by no means a bad light. It has been a loyal and cheap companion. In fact, it helped me shoot these scenes here, and I really like its reliability. But in terms of the things that are important to me, it's just way more limited. And that's exactly why the Molus X100 RGB has earned a permanent spot in my kit. In my opinion, the advantages are just too strong, especially considering its power of 100 watts, its flexibility, and all the included features and accessories, all while staying compact with its form factor. So if you're as impressed as I am with the scenes that I just showed you, you can grab the light at a 10% discount with my code and the link in the description below. And yeah, that's it for this one, and I guess I'll see you in the next one. Peace.